A top scientist admitted that Britain's lockdowns were political rather than medical. Our health minister said there will be future lockdowns. Klaus Schwab, I don't like to pry, says he admires China's lockdowns. Good job then that the WHO won't soon have the ability to impose lockdowns across the world. They will have that ability because there are now global bodies that are unelected which are preparing to be able to impose laws that bypass democracy. I know that sounds like the sort of thing that I would make up, but it isn't. You guys are going to have a lockdown now because of this pandemic. Now, this is happening simultaneously to a bunch of censorship laws being passed across the world that will prevent freedom of speech and free conversation, where you might say stuff like, hey, is this lockdown necessary? I don't remember voting for it. That conversation, that's not happening anymore. A British politician who, during the pandemic, was important, but since then has been on reality TV and stuff. It's kind of crazy, really. He's saying there are definitely going to be more lockdowns, and your man Klaus Schwab, remember when you voted for Klaus Schwab to be in charge of your life? No. Yeah, that's because you didn't. Anyway, he likes China and the way that they do lockdowns. So all in all, what we're potentially moving towards, and let me know in the comments if you saw this coming, is a kind of globalist decree that will enable people without your consent or vote to lock you in your home if they deem it necessary. Of course, this is for your safety. Your safety. You can see from the way they carry on. Like, what are they doing now? They're trading stocks in Congress. For your safety. Nothing but your safety in mind. Hit the notification bell and subscribe. We make this content every day. We want you to see all of it. Let's look at the first part of this rapidly evolving and exciting story.
We've got to be ready to hit a pandemic hard.
This guy was the health minister in our country during the pandemic. During the pandemic, he was having an extramarital affair, and this piece of footage emerged of him.
Lockdown action, if necessary, that is wider, earlier, more stringent than feels comfortable at the time.
That's so weird, isn't it? Because many scientists are saying that the impact of lockdown was negligible. Some people are saying that lockdown wasn't necessary, that it always have been focusing on sheltering the vulnerable rather than a ubiquitous lockdown. And yet he's saying it should be harder, stronger, longer. Are you still talking about lockdown, Matt?
And the failure to plan for that was a much bigger flaw in the strategy than the fact that it was targeted at the wrong disease.
This does not make sense, does it? The problem was we didn't start early enough. Don't worry about the fact that we was preparing for a completely different disease with different characteristics. The fact is we should have done that wrong preparation and wrong plan more and earlier. But it was the wrong plan. It's almost as if what they're favouring is the ability to regulate and control and impose authoritative measures over a correct response. They're trying to tell you that the problem was they didn't govern you hard enough, not they governed you badly. And one of the gatekeepers to prevent that kind of thing happening again is democracy, consensus, the ballot box, conversation, all things that are either being ignored or deliberately shut down. Britain must prepare for wider, earlier and more stringent lockdowns in the face of future pandemics, Matt Hancock has claimed. Well, he ignored the one we did do. If we'd have done it harder, I might have ignored it less. But you were out actually having an extramarital affair because it weren't hard enough. Should have been more stringent. If it had been more stringent, you wouldn't have that CCTV footage of me adjusting my winky woo, having an affair with someone I work with. I'd have stayed at home and honoured my marriage vows. In a way, it's your fault that I've been unfaithful. I'm gonna ring my ex-wife. Excuse me, yeah, we should have been more like China. Hello? TV remote. He made the claim despite mounting evidence that lockdown has caused more harm than the pandemic, from soaring child mental health referrals to a cancer bomb of patients whose treatment was delayed alongside a struggling economy. Now let me see those soaring mental health referrals for children. Ooh, and the cancer bomb again? More lockdowns, I think. David Davis criticised his former cabinet colleague, saying that lockdowns were ill-conceived and based on scientific guesswork, not science. He added, Mr. Hancock has not shown a smidgen of evidence to support his proposal that we should have locked down earlier, just as there was very little evidence when they chose to lock down in the first place. Now look, have you got any evidence? No. What about a smidgen? No. Mr. Hancock advocated for lockdown, saying that the UK was completely wrong by assuming a pandemic could not be stopped. It is central to what we must learn as a country that we've got to be ready to hit a pandemic hard, he said. We've got to be able to take action, lockdown action if necessary, that is wider, earlier, more stringent than feels comfortable at the time. I hope that's not what you were saying in that corridor. Now these could just be the wacky wild words of a long discredited nutjob who's since appeared on reality TV after being disgraced after being caught on camera having an affair. But the fact is that the WHO, who you didn't vote for but fund to a degree, also believe there should be more lockdowns. And wait for it, they don't want you voting for them. They want to impose them from a top-down perspective. And wait, I'm not finished. They want 5% of your country's health budget to fund it. We're locking you in your house. Oh, well, at least I don't have to pay for it. You do have to pay for it. Mr. Hancock said, I understand deeply the consequences of lockdown and the negative consequences for many, many people, many of which persist to this day. I don't think you do, because I think if you did, you wouldn't be saying that. You'd be saying lockdown was a mistake. The whole plan was for a different form of disease. There is now mounting evidence that when you weigh the negative consequences and side effects of lockdown up against its negligible benefits, the whole thing was an error. We were mimicking a nation that has an entirely different political structure and culture. And also, I apologise for ignoring those lockdown rules while the lockdown was happening. That's what someone who understands would say. Despite acknowledging their damage, Mr. Hancock later said he would still back restrictions unless the costs of lockdown are greater than the cost that the pandemic would bring. Well, I think that's where we are, darling. He admitted that the country prepared for the wrong pandemic by focusing on flu. They prepared for the wrong pandemic. I mean, isn't that government all over? I mean, isn't that an argument to radically alter the model itself? You don't want a model where you fund a centralised authoritative structure that prepares for the wrong pandemic and then says it should have prepared for it better and stronger and done more of it. But you've just said it was wrong. I know. But maybe if we'd done it so wrong, it might have gone all the way round and been right again. Don't think that's science. But insisted that even in those circumstances, restriction on civil liberties would also have been needed. Earlier this year, the Telegraph's lockdown files revealed that those running the country during COVID privately acknowledged that the lockdown was terrible for other outcomes. This is the problem with censorship and the assumption that centralised authority is better than you, cleverer than you, wiser than you. They make decisions like not telling us, because people all the time go, what about the impact on people that need regular cancer treatment or heart or diabetes medicine? And also, what about the impact on children? We were all saying that stuff anyway. No, la 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 la, it's all going to be fine. And then later they go, yeah, no, that was right. So how are you supposed to trust them for this next pandemic that they're already apparently planning or preparing for? Look at it however you want to. You need an open discourse so that we can consensually and democratically make decisions together. That's not a model they're interested in. Why? Because without the ability to stringently regulate, you cannot accommodate a model that requires corporate, global, non-domestic forces to act in the way that they would like to. And I include in that WEF, WHO, and global corporations. I'm not suggesting it's a conspiracy. I'm suggesting it's a convergence of interest. And the only thing that can prevent that convergence of interest being maintained is a democracy where people go, that's not convenient for us. We don't want to do that. Meanwhile, at the World Economic Forum's 14th annual meeting of the new champions, Klaus Schwab delivered a speech that reverberated through the halls of the conference centre. China has been known for its use of technology to assist with suppression and oppression to control the public through the COVID pandemic, and Schwab's words lauded China's adoption of new COVID control measures while commending the country's effort in catalysing social dynamism. Complicated stuff. Let's have a look.
Premier Li has a distinguished career in public service, having led the economic and social development of 3 major provinces. At the critical moment when China adopted new COVID control measures and started to boost economic development, social dynamism, and international cooperation.
Klaus Schwab's speech did not shy away from acknowledging China's ascension to a juggernaut of economic development, social reforms, and diplomatic inroads. China has made remarkable achievements in economy, social development, in diplomacy, and in many other areas, he elaborated, failing to mention the costs that have been paid to carry that out and the erosion of civil liberties. It sounds like he admires China and China's model, and possibly will host conferences in which people suggest we emulate and directly copy that model. China's social credit system has been at the vanguard of debates regarding surveillance and civil liberties. A behemoth apparatus, this system utilises advanced technologies to monitor and regulate the behaviour of citizens, rewarding compliance and meting out restrictions to those deemed errant. The extent of these restrictions can be all-encompassing, affecting millions of citizens by restraining their ability to travel, secure insurance, rent homes, and more. Moreover, China's treatment of the Uyghurs, characterised by the use of facial recognition for profiling and the consistent use of re-education camps casts a long shadow over the accolades bestowed upon its advancements. It would seem that a more balanced assessment of China's current economic and social system would include the persecution of a minority within their nation, as well as advancing technology-based control mechanisms such as social credit scores and the use of facial recognition technologies. Perhaps these things are not being critiqued because there is a proposal to bring them about in your culture, in our cultures. If you start criticising China for doing it on the Wednesday, it's not so easy on Thursday to go, do you know what I like about China? Facial recognition technology. But how can you ever enforce such draconian measures outside of the CCCP? In a seminal discussion before the Pandemic Response and Recovery All-Party Parliamentary Group, that's the APPG, in the UK, leading health experts raised serious concerns over the World Health Organization's proposed pandemic treaty and the amendments to the International Health Regulations, the IHR. The treaty would grant the WHO surveillance and censorship powers. That's weird, isn't it? The WHO don't need to worry about them. They're the World Health Organization. They just want to help you with your ailments, with your illnesses. They care about your health. But they want to censor and surveil? How's that helping my health? Let us tell you. Dr. David Bell, an ex-WHO medical officer, and Professor Garrett Wallace-Brown, who chairs global health policy at the University of Leeds, outlined how the proposals could reshape the dynamics between the WHO and its member nations and imperil critical health initiatives. So one of these people used to work at the WHO, the other one's from the global health policy at Leeds University. And what they're suggesting is that not only does this seem like an overreach of an authoritative, non-democratic body, but that it could also imperil your health. I'm struggling to see the upside. The contentious point revolves around the unprecedented authority these proposals could vest in the WHO. According to Dr. Bell, the WHO could wield the power to demand hefty financial contributions from countries, suppress scientific discourse, oh no, not this again, and enforce travel restrictions, lockdowns, and compulsory vaccinations in response to health emergencies, which the body can declare at its discretion. At their discretion, they could suppress scientific discourse. We can't talk about that, but it's a scientific discourse. That's what we don't like about it. Enforce travel restrictions. Do you mind if I go over there? I do mind. You're not going. Lockdowns. Could I go out? No. And compulsory vaccinations. Do I have a choice in whether I take this vaccination? I'm afraid not, sir. Does that seem to you like the sort of thing you want to be funding and signing up to? Let me know in the comments. Bell explained the transformation of the WHO since its inception in 1946. It was initially formed to offer guidance and coordination in health emergencies. Yeah, like what we can do, man, is, we can just offer you some guidance and health emergencies and stuff. Oh yeah, God, in a health emergency, we'd love some guidance. Yeah, we're just going to guide you, to not travel anywhere and to stay in your house and to have this medication, and that'll be 5% of your health budget. Is that guidance or an order? I don't know. What does the gun tell you? It has increasingly become centralised. A shift in funding patterns, notably from private donors, you know who, let me know in the comments, has led to the WHO turning into an organisation where external influences dictate the agenda. The implications of this shift are particularly alarming when considering the broadened definitions of health emergencies. The WHO was established in 1946 with the best of intentions. Just some plucky kids starting the WHO, not the Beatles. Look, man, we just want to start an organisation that helps people in emergencies. Yeah! Get in your fucking house! I want to hold your hand. Well, you mustn't. Get 2 meters apart. How did you come up with that? Just a guess. Over the decades, we've seen a significant change in direction. It's a worrying background in which the IHR amendments and the treaty are being negotiated, said Bell. The discussion also elicited responses from UK lawmakers. Esther McVeigh, APPG co-chair, called for greater parliamentary scrutiny, questioning the wisdom of granting sweeping powers to the WHO, a largely privately funded body with no apparent oversight. You see this body? Yeah, it's privately funded. Is there any oversight? There's none. Let's grant them sweeping powers. That means like whoosh, like that. Not like regulating it and checking it. Oh, are you sure about that bit of the power? No, just give them the whole lot. Whoosh. Labour MP Graham Stringer, also an APPG co-chair, voiced opposition to the WHO's prospective expansion of powers. He expressed anxiety regarding the likely influence of commercial interest within the WHO and cited the organisation's controversial stance on mask wearing as indicative of political rather than scientific decision-making. Stringer stressed that the potential impact on public health, democracy, civil liberties and individual rights necessitates rigorous debate and transparent review. It's good that you're making that point now, because in a couple of years, you won't be able to. Both experts and parliamentarians conveyed the urgent need for caution and thorough analysis of the WHO's proposed changes, calling for countries to retain autonomy in addressing public health challenges and for the protection of global health initiatives from undue influence. Some rather important points raised there. If actually what you believe in is individual freedom, diversity, numerous ways of being human, it all stands to reason that you should decentralise authority, not further centralised authority. Surely what we have learned, let's be kind here, since the pandemic is that there ought to have been more discussion, more debate, not more censorship, more surveillance, more power granted to a privately funded body that has no oversight.